Today, Trump speaks with Putin and advises him not to escalate the war in Ukraine. What Trump's presidency means for the Pentagon and for Elon Musk. And how the next US administration looms large over COP climate talks. It's Monday, November 11th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes, every weekday. I'm Carmel Crimmins in Dublin. First, to the war in Ukraine, where we've seen some of the largest drone attacks by each side since the start of the conflict. The exchanges over the weekend saw Ukraine attacking Moscow with dozens of drones. That followed Russia's launch of more than 100 of them on Saturday. The escalating tension reflects a wider nervousness in Ukraine on what will happen when Donald Trump returns to the White House. Trump has already spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin in a telephone call where he advised him not to escalate the war. President Joe Biden has invited Trump to the White House on Wednesday, where he's likely to push his successor to continue to support Kyiv. And you can get an in-depth look at what a second Trump presidency means for the war in our weekend episode. There's a link in today's pod description. Trump's language during his campaign not only has Ukraine worried, he's also vowed to purge the US military of what he called woke generals. Now the question in the halls of the Pentagon is whether he will go much further. Phil Stewart has been looking at this.
I think Trump learned a lot of tough lessons in his first term, and his view of the US military going into his second term is going to be a lot darker than it was in 2016. He surrounded himself with these well-known military leaders like Jim Mattis and John Kelly, who was his chief of staff. And he thought by bringing these people on, he would have really tough leaders who would help enact his policy vision. And instead, these people turned into some of his absolute fiercest critics. I think he is going to be looking for, based on everything we've heard from current and former officials and people who were, Republicans in his administration, he's going to be looking for people that are a lot more loyal to him and ready to carry out his vision. And if U.S. generals and career Pentagon officials are unwilling to do that, he's going to be ready to fire them.
Culture war issues are a particular pressure point, right?
Trump has really focused a lot of his firepower in the campaign on attacking what he called the woke military. And when he was doing that, he would often refer to transgender troops. The term itself has been used by his allies in Congress to also go after those members of the military that would be supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And so I feel like it's a very broad term. And if he goes through and gets rid of the woke generals, you could see quite a lot of firings.
The Trump transition team did not respond to a request for comment. The president-elect is moving quickly on the domestic front as well. Trump has announced that Tom Homan, the former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, will be in charge of the country's borders, calling him the border czar in a post on his Truth Social platform. And Trump's ally Elon Musk has endorsed Republican Senator Rick Scott for Senate Majority Leader. Trump has not yet endorsed anyone in the race. Qatar has told Hamas and Israel that it will stall its own efforts to mediate a Gaza ceasefire until both sides show, quote, willingness and seriousness to resume talks. At least 40 Palestinians were killed by Israeli strikes across Gaza on Sunday. That's according to Palestinian health officials and a human rights group. Dutch police say they bust more than 300 pro-Palestinian protesters and dropped them off on the outskirts of the capital for ignoring a ban on demonstrations in Amsterdam. 50 more were detained following clashes involving Israeli soccer fans last week. Hundreds of demonstrators had gathered in the capital's Dam Square on Sunday, chanting "Amsterdam says no to genocide." The ban on demonstrations is extended until Thursday, after last week's attack on Israeli soccer supporters following a match between Maccabi Tel Aviv and Ajax Amsterdam. Over on markets, Bitcoin is hitting record highs. The cryptocurrency has rallied past $81,000, boosted by Donald Trump's support for digital assets and the prospect of a crypto-friendly Congress. Trump vowed to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet during his presidential campaign. And the industry spent more than $119 million backing pro-crypto congressional candidates. By and large, that bet has paid off, and it's now hoping that means Congress will champion crypto like never before. Elon Musk is another big champion of crypto, and also, of course, Donald Trump. His support of Trump in the final months of his presidential campaign was boisterous and generous.
President Trump must win to preserve the Constitution. He must win to preserve democracy in America.
Musk contributed more than $100 million to a pro-Trump super PAC leading up to the presidential election. Now, the world's richest man is in position to exert substantial influence over federal agencies and policies that directly impact his businesses. Trump has even said Musk will head up efforts to reduce government spending through his proposed Government Efficiency Commission.
And Elon, because he's not very busy, has agreed to head that task force. Be interesting. If he has the time, it'll be a good one to do it, but he's agreed to do it.
Rachel Levy has been looking into how Elon Musk's businesses and federal agencies are entangled.
So we don't know exactly how this efficiency effort on Musk's part will shape out. At the same time, there are several federal agencies that interact and regulate Musk's businesses. That could include, for example, the FDA. The FDA regulates medical devices, and he has a brain chip company called Neuralink that needs FDA approval. Tesla is regulated. Its enforcer, essentially, is an agency called the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And they're looking at safety of cars, what we're driving on the road. And what our sources told us is that he could urge the administration to fire officials that he doesn't like, that stand in his way for his companies. He could roll back regulations that keep SpaceX from being able to do what it wants, or Tesla from being able to do what it wants. Neither NASA nor OSHA, which regulates worker safety, has taken any significant enforcement action against SpaceX over worker injuries. My colleague Marissa Taylor had a really great investigation about worker injuries at SpaceX. So when we're talking about sort of a deregulatory environment for Musk companies, there wasn't necessarily a super strong regulatory arm in the first place.
Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and Musk did not respond to requests for comment. The Trump campaign called Musk a once-in-a-generation industry leader in a statement to Reuters. The annual UN Climate Summit kicks off today in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku. World leaders from major economies, including the United States, are skipping this year's meeting, which comes just days after the election of Donald Trump, a climate change denier. We caught up with Valerie Volkovici to find out how Trump's win is impacting discussions.
Trump has said that he would withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement again. And despite a lot of positive talk that the energy transition is moving forward, countries realize that without the United States there as a major player, it casts a kind of dark shadow over the talks and what can be achieved. And this year's talks focus on reaching a new goal for mobilizing climate finance to help the world's most vulnerable countries deal with the impacts of climate change. Without the U.S. in the discussions, I think that people's ambitions are lower. So I think that really is the elephant in the room.
And if you're interested in climate finance, check out our Reuters Econ World podcast on carbon markets and how they're used to address climate change. We'll drop a link to that episode in our pod description. Today's recommended read takes a look at Michigan and how Kamala Harris's loss there underlines the Democrats' weak spots. She lost the state by more than 80,000 votes as union workers, black voters, Arab Americans and Muslims either failed to go to the polls or cast their ballots for Donald Trump. You can find a link to the story in today's pod description. And for more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. To never miss an episode, subscribe on your favourite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.